Everything is going a little bit slow. There we go. Hey, everybody. I am Kelly Blackman. This is How to Win at Everything. And I am so glad that everyone is able to join us today. We have a panel full of awesome women. Let me start off there. And just for context, everybody, this is called. Oh, I'm sorry. I got some extra reverb coming back. This is our show. It's called Empowering Black Women in Business Through Emotional Intelligence. Of the most emotional intelligent women you may find, and they are all awesome with conducting business. Uh, Before I just let everyone know, oh, that's one of you all.
Oh, we lost Kelly.
We lost him. Hi.
Hi. I was backstage. I wasn't sure why, but looks like I'm on the
Yeah.
screen now.
Yes.
Yeah,
think
Kelly just dropped out.
Kelly just dropped
Welcome.
out. I think he was having bandwidth issues because he started to
Sound
break up
robotic a
there.
bit.
Yeah. So we'll just wait for Kelly to pop back on in.
Mhm. All right.
Or do we want to take the time to maybe introduce ourselves?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
do that. Let's
Yeah.
start with Adrian. We'll let you go. So I'm like
Oh.
doing this kind of clockwork based on how we're
Okay.
showing up on the screen.
Oh, there's
Oh, there we go. He's back.
Can't hear you,
Can't
Kelly.
hear you.
You're muted.
All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for being here. Sorry, I had some audio and technical issues. Yes, I'm sorry, you all. Please don't let me stop the flow. This is y'all show. If everybody can go ahead and introduce yourselves, that would be great.
So I'll start. My name is Adrienne Somerville. I am the CEO of two companies, Somerville Consulting Group and Talent and Technical Solutions. So we design and build IT solutions and do a lot of data analytics that enables companies to not only attract, but retain and develop their workforce, the most important resource. I'm also an Amazon best-selling author. Let's see, I graduated from Norfolk State University undergrad. Mom, and have a master's degree from Florida Institute of Technology. And I also studied at Harvard University in Georgetown in terms of legislative affairs and executive leadership. My passion is my foundation in my grandmother's name, the Carolyn E. Parker Foundation, where I am humble to serve and be that humanistic leader for young people to look up to. Thank you for having me.
I can go next. I'm Dr. Holiday Bell. I'm a board certified physician as well as a certified sleep specialist, and I am the founder and CEO of my sleep consulting company, The Solution is Sleep LLC. I work with individuals who suffer from a variety of sleep issues, including chronic insomnia, to deliver cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Also work with corporations to do consulting to help their workforce become more rested so that they're more productive and then happier and healthier overall. I'm currently in the Chicagoland area, but did train in Washington, D.C. for about 5 years. Oh no.
I think this is gonna be our show with Ken popping in.
Right. As a special guest.
It's gonna be our show with Ken popping in.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Lucretia, you want to go next, and then I'll go after you.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Lucretia Davis here. I am a LinkedIn marketing and business coach. I work with individuals to help them launch their coaching or consulting business from the ground up. We do that from establishing what it is they are going to promote as a business, all the way through packaging their offer, implementing systems, and marketing the brand on LinkedIn to get clients, leads, and visibility. That is it. That's me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tammy Triolo. I am owner and founder of PCQ Consulting. And what I do is I consult companies on company culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am also the co-founder of Unleash Empathy with Vonda Page. And that endeavor is helping people through masterclasses, unleash empathy to address racial and systemic biases. My passion is fashion. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you probably are used to my Fashion Fridays, where I show how I style and create myself. I also do that for some professional women who are trying to discover their own personal style. And I am happy to be here.
Thank you all so much. Again, some technical issues going on here, but I am back and hopefully back for good. Now, the whole point of this, and let me just make sure I explain this for anyone who may not understand kind of what's going on. Um, after the last probably 5 years of ups and downs and turmoil and including COVID and social unrest and this and that, a lot of things have started to come to light. And one of the biggest things that have come to light is about uh, a lot of the disparity between opportunities. So I spent most of this season on my show of How to Win at Everything. I've interviewed actually, I haven't interviewed all of you all, except for Dr. Holiday Bale here, who has been definitely on the show. Thank you. Uh, One of the things that keeps coming up is this disparity in the business world, especially with Black women being the number one group as far as starting new businesses. There seems to be a huge disparity of opportunities. There seems to be a lot of gender bias, a lot of racial bias. There are obviously a lot of hurdles that are preventing Black women from being able to really get started with business and definitely to be successful in business. So I thought it would be a great idea to address some of that. Um, when we look at some of the issues that Black women are facing, like I said, it's going to be things like gender biases and even really subtle things like attractiveness or there's a bunch of stuff that we're finding in the workplace as well. But I wanted to actually get the perspective of Black women who were actually conducting business and who also had a grasp of their own emotional intelligence so that we can actually start to build out, especially for anyone who gets to watch us, to really build out the idea of using emotional intelligence will allow us to kind of get past some of those hurdles. So the first thing I'd like to ask you all, and we can just we can do this popcorn style. That way it'll be nice and fun. The first question is, what's led you to emotional intelligence, and how has that journey been for you? So Tammy, let's start with you, and then you can just pick whoever goes next.
I think emotional intelligence came naturally for me based in the work that I do, right? So my work is very people focused. And if you're going to be in a people focused, people centric business, you have to understand people. You have to understand subtle clues that people give you and their body language and their facial expression. And especially with Black people in the workplace and especially with Black women, right? So sometimes what happens is Black women, we're communicating even when we're not communicating. So if something is happening at work, I'll look at, Dr. Holiday, she'll look at me, we'll be communicating just with our eyes what's happening. And so I think because we are Black people and we've always had to communicate differently, I think our level of emotional intelligence is just above most people. And because we're constantly having to be aware of our surroundings, we're constantly having to be aware about where we're going, what the body language is in that space that we're in, what people are saying, how they're moving, the energy shift. I think it just gives us a heightened sense of emotional intelligence because we've had to be emotionally intelligent to survive.
Hmm. And actually, Angela, do you mind going next?
Yeah, I can jump in. I totally agree. I think that, growing up, I've always had to be on high alert. As you mentioned, I actually came from inner city Chicago, poor neighborhood, poor area. And so there was a different type of alertness. My mom, made a decision at a young age that she was going to get us out of that situation. And though we still lived in a poor neighborhood, she got someone to actually pay for us to go to a private school, a Christian school, which was excellent. But then I was the only Black girl in my class. So then it was being aware of like what other people thought about me and what they assumed about me. And like, Tammy said, having to pick out those subtle cues in the body language. And then in my role as a physician, of course, so much of that comes back to being emotionally intelligent and not aware of only my thoughts and my emotions, but the patient's emotions, and what are they saying to me that they may be afraid to say or not comfortable enough to say, or having to deliver bad news, having to deliver great news, helping to bring life into this world. There are so many different experiences that I encounter on a day-to-day basis, and so many individuals that I interact with, that I have no choice but to be aware of how they're feeling and how what I'm saying affects them and what that means, and sometimes speak on their behalf because they don't know how to express what they feel. So there's so many layers that I think go back to from when I was much younger to now in my everyday life.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Lucretia, how about you?
I want to make sure I understand the question. Can you repeat it, please, Kelly?
Yep. So I want to know, what was the journey from, not everyone is emotionally intelligent. So what was their journey like? What got you on that journey? And yeah, well, let's just start there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say what got me on that journey was earlier in my career. I would say about maybe 10, 12 years ago. I was always a key contributor at work, always meeting my metrics, exceeding them, all of that, top performer. But I had been held back to moving to the next level in my career. And I was once told that I was not ready, but the potential they see. And so I kind of probed into that more, and there was some feedback regarding, well, let me just say this. Now, understanding the different pillars of emotional intelligence, I would say that some of these things were inherent, like empathy and motivation and what have you. But then in the workplace, I think I still had some work around this. And so I would say that I'm in a space now where I am looking to increase my emotional intelligence, increasingly looking to do that. So I'm still cultivating that, though I have definitely improved. And just so you guys know, some of the feedback I got back then was, I would say, to be frank with you guys, being overly emotional.
Okay.
Yeah, being overly emotional in the workplace. And that's when I had to realize that, people don't really care.
Is that separate from being like aggressive? They're just saying being overly passionate or overly.
Yeah, that was
What do
that.
you mean to
Well, to kind of give you guys some examples, for example, if I were to make a mistake or something like that, I would be extremely hard on myself. And and also when I were to get some feedback that I don't agree with, I would be a little bit too,
What?
advocating for it, I guess, in some opinions. But I can admit that I did have an ego at that stage. So I know my answer is all over the place.
No,
I
no,
ain't got
no.
it all
It's
emotionally intelligent like you guys here, but I'm still working through it.
no, you know what? It's a journey for everybody. And what's really funny, I think Adrian was on the same page that I'm about to hit. Uh, when you're a woman and you show up and you're overly emotional,
Right.
when that's a man, it's just they're passionate about their work.
Right.
They just care a
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
And specifically when it's a black woman with all of the extra bias on, like, oh yeah, well they're aggressive and blah blah blah. It's like that shows up different depending on who it is. So
Yeah.
I think it's an awesome thing to one, identify that, and two, to be able to start working on that.
And I was labeled as assertive, not
Yeah.
aggressive, but
Right.
I was labeled as assertive. And I think if I believe in something, I'm going to present my evidence, have
That's right.
notes, do a whole thing. And I think it might be a little bit too much at that point in time.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Adrian, how about you? What is your journey to get into emotional intelligence? How's it been? What has it been like?
Well, it's interesting. So I do believe feedback is a gift. So I've always solicited it. And I consider myself a life learner. Like I'm always in school or classes or continuing to develop, my craft, but also my technical expertise. And so as I came up the ranks, I would always get like different feedback from different leaders. And many of my mentors and role models didn't look like me because I'm in a male dominated space. And so I had mainly Caucasian men. And one time I had an African American female that suggested I be more aggressive, like you're coming across kind of soft, and you want the respect at the table, particularly as you come up the ranks. And so for me, I just wanted to know how I show up, and more importantly, what work as I continue to mature and continue to be in different forms, socially and professionally. How am I being perceived? And so I did some soul searching. I don't know if you all have heard of the Johari window, where it's very introspective in terms of like your journey in life, your experiences, the things that shape and make you you. And so I would do this work. I call it the lonely work, right? The work that only I can do. So I do the lonely work, and then I would go and I would ask, well, how do you think I handled that situation? How do you think the meeting went? If you were me, what would you have said? Like, how could you? And I would ask that of men and women. And so for me, the emotional intelligence continued to be refined as I continue to seek out opportunities to strengthen my different areas, and then ensure that I was showing up as my best self. Each and every time I had an opportunity, because I always felt like people were watching you anyway, how you handled every situation, good, bad. One lady even told me people watch how you handle defeat. And so I always wanted to ensure that I was well-rounded in terms of my presence, and of course representing other African American women.
So what it sounds like is everyone's kind of had their own individual journey to get in here. I had someone ask, hey, well, I know it's the case that Black women are experiencing this stuff, but not every Black woman experiences all of these different difficulties with biases, with gender inequalities, and with these different disparities. Let me just ask, have you all experienced this in the workplace? Have you experienced this in your businesses?
Yes.
And if you all don't mind, can anyone just jump in with any like an example of one of these times where this has happened?
I can share. So one time I was presenting. I was getting ready to do a really important presentation to some very influential leaders, and some that would have resulted in funding of an initiative, right? And so I had to do a pre-brief to a Caucasian male, and he summed me up by saying I was too articulate, too academic, too technical, and that and my energy, I need to manage it. I thought that was a positive thing, right? Because I'm excited about what I'm doing. And the last and final thing he told me was, before you present, dummy it down. Now, I don't know of any of my male counterparts that would ever be advised to dummy anything down when they're soliciting money, right? So they're briefing their program. They're soliciting endorsements in terms of, I need advocacy, I need funding. I'm looking at scalability here. This is going to be very impactful with longevity. And I was advised to dummy it down. And so I felt like, I don't know if anyone else would have been told that. And that was a reflective moment for me, thinking like, wow, is it because of who I am? And manage your energy. Energy is always great, I thought, when you're presenting, because I want you to be excited about what I'm offering. And that feedback to me, it was one that I literally, for a couple of weeks, I was processing and pulsing and processing. But yeah, that's an example.
Can I say something about that? I think the reason why, because I'm one of these people, I go into a room and I just observe the people in the room. I listen to how people are speaking. I listen to what they're talking about. I listen to everything that they're saying. And what I have experienced sometimes when I go into spaces with people perceived to be influential, right? Because you may be influential to you and you may have no influence over me. So I say perceived to be influential. And a lot of times those people are in those positions not because they're smart, not because they're excellent, not because they're great, because mediocrity sells in their space. So when somebody's saying to you, dumb it down, I understand how that hits, especially if you're a Black woman. Like, well, what are you saying to me? And probably is because when they're talking to one another, there's nothing bright about it. There's nothing intelligent about it. There's nothing earth shattering about it. We don't often see it because we're in spaces with people that we think are like, oh my God, that's the head of this person. That's the head of that person. And a lot of times people are head of whatever because my Uncle Bob knew Uncle Jim that got me the job, that got me the job, that got me the job. And so because I always think, how did you get here? I'm watching you more so, and I want you to impress me more than I'm going into a room to impress you. Because simply because the way our country is structured in terms of business, government, and law, whiteness is expected to be there. So I need you to tell me why you are exceptional to be there, and not that I have to prove my exceptionalism to you.
I like
That is
that.
a nice turnaround. Yeah.
I like that.
I have a
Like, yeah,
comment.
you're the one who. Yeah, yeah. Jump on in.
Yeah, I have a comment. I wanted to address what the person originally said, which was not every Black woman experiences bias. Is that what the
Yeah.
comment was? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know if we can prove that or not.
Yeah.
I will say that I have experienced bias on a couple of occasions, but the one that caused a lot of trauma
Mm-hmm.
that it took for me a long time to recover from was my last employer that I worked at. And what happened was I was working on a team, and unfortunately, my manager that I was working under for the 4 years, my tenure, she passed away. She lost her battle to skin cancer. Yeah, skin cancer. So then they promoted a guy on our team, white guy, and he had it out for me. He had it out for me. I can recall joining the team, and I learned very quickly. I learned very quickly the job, and he was asking the team a question, and everyone said they didn't know, and I tried to provide some insight. I was like, hey, such and such, and he literally like just did not look at me, didn't acknowledge me, just completely ignored what I said when it was helpful to him, but he just ignored what I said, I guess because I was new, or I don't know, a couple other things.
Mm-hmm.
Is why we won't go there, but yeah. And so he had it out for me from the beginning. Then when he became management, I was still that person who was helping out with extra stuff. My manager, before she left or transitioned, she had me helping her with some managerial stuff, right? And he didn't know how to do this as a new manager. So I was still helping out with that task. And so something happened where he wanted to call me into a meeting, and he was telling me something, and then I was just simply responding to what he was saying. And then he just cut me off, and he said, Lucretia, okay, I get it. You're a know-it-all. You know everything. And I was like, what? And he's like, I get it. You're one of the smartest people on the team, but you're a know-it-all, whatever. And it really hurt my feelings because I was not trying to come from a place of being a know-it-all at all. I was literally trying to help. I felt like I kept trying to prove myself on this team. I was the only person of color on this team. And I was literally genuinely coming from a good place. And I don't think I would even give feedback in a way that's like, yeah, look what I know. I would just be saying it. And it really hurt my feelings. And that actually led to me leaving the job. And I thought I was going to grow there and everything. And then right before I was leaving, we had my review, and I got a 2 out of 5. And I've never had that low of a performance review. So it was just a lot going on. But yeah, apparently if you're trying to be helpful, you can be perceived as a know-it-all, I guess, if you know a
Very
little bit
true.
more than the person in the
It's
audience.
an interesting balance to strike, right? Because
Yeah, I'm
one
gonna
being
strike
black,
that
there's
too.
always that sort of possibility and that sense and that idea. Like, is this coming from a correct place? Is this, should I even be taking this feedback, or is this coming from the lens of someone else's bias or something like that?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I totally feel for you, Lucretia. But their loss is all of our gain. So
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm
yeah,
good. I'm
now,
good.
But you know
uh,
that, but that's kind of sad what she just explained, because either you retreat and refrain from contributing,
yep,
and now you're not
yep.
perceived as either a team player or
Or
someone
you're
that's
Yeah.
an
just not smart
individual
enough,
contributor.
or
Yeah, she's not
yep,
engaged, you'll get that. But when you try to be helpful and share, look, I'm here to partner and
Right.
yep,
collaborate so we
That's
all
so true.
move forward, then that backfires. I've had that experience too, actually more recent than not. Um, and it's tough, because do you sit around and do nothing and not contribute, and then you're perceived incorrectly as well.
Yeah.
yep,
I think this is why emotional intelligence is critical, right? Because you can kind of go in and read the people that you're
yep,
working with, right? Like, so I knew some
Hmm.
managers and leaders I was working with that me contributing was going to be seen or
yep,
taken in a way that I didn't want it to be. And so I just kind of, you know, fell back, and when
yeah,
asked I
Hmm.
participated, but I didn't always volunteer because
yep,
I could just tell from just watching them, just interacting with them and seeing how they
Hmm.
interacted with other people, what kind of relationship I was going to have with these people and how they wanted to manage and how they needed to be in the space. And so I think this is going to be critical, especially for black
yep,
women, black people in the workplace. EQ is going to be critical to your career success. EQ is going to be
exactly.
critical to your mental health, because once you understand how
Hmm.
people move and operate, then you can move and operate with them, right? And
Yeah.
so the way I
Hmm.
walk into a room is you need to prove, the assumption is I make for white people is you're here because you're white. Now you need to demonstrate to me why you're not here because you're white. Never that I am black and I'm going to show you why I'm supposed to be here. And I think just
Hmm.
going in with that mindset shifts how you operate and move in that space, right? If everything in
Yeah,
corporate America, everything in our government is set up for white people, I expect you to be there. So now I want to know why you are here. Are you deserving of being here? And not whether or not I'm deserving of being there, right? Now, that may be their perspective on me because I'm black, but we're both walking in with that same mind frame. And so they have something to prove to me. And for
Hmm.
them, I have something to prove to them. But I'm not operating from a space of simply because I'm black, I got to demonstrate for you why I belong here. I walk into a space and said, well, you're white. Demonstrate to me why you didn't get this job because your friend, your mom knew somebody, your dad knew somebody, or nepotism is why you're here. Prove to me
Mhm.
why you belong in this space.
Hmm.
And I think when you match energy with energy, people kind of know, like, all right, well, I'm not going to run over this one. And so then we're both proving to one another, and that builds a place of collaboration because I'm not
Hmm.
trying to prove anything to you, and you may feel like you have nothing to prove to me. And so it creates space for people to come in and collaborate.
Mhm.
I
I
think you
like
bring
that.
up a really good point, Tammy, about that idea about creating that space. Because a lot of times what ends up happening, and I know being a black male, I get the same thing. I recognize now I can't complain without it being, seen a certain way. And that
Hmm.
emotional intelligence part allows me to at least have the ability to recognize what's coming in on me.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a
Hmm.
manager one time who's basically like, yeah, yeah, hey, I want everyone to do their best. So if I'm messing up, you tell me. And I'm a pretty soft-spoken guy, and I'm like, hey, maybe we can adjust this. And her whole mood changed, and it became a place where I was a threat because I'm
Hmm.
doing the thing that you asked me to do. But that emotional intelligence piece does allow us to basically say, hey, let me open this up and see where you're actually coming from, not just what you're saying. And now
Mhm.
I can choose my behavior to fit, or I
Exactly.
can leave. Or I
Right.
can
Right. And
leave.
I think that part is important. Having enough of an introspection and emotional intelligence to know when you can thrive elsewhere, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes you can't leave or whatever, you're not in a situation where that's best for you, but sometimes you have to understand where you can grow and where people will see your potential,
That's
and
right.
where if you stay, you might end up dimming your own light and second guessing yourself, like, should I say this? Am I doing too much?
Yep.
Understanding when it's time to leave and grow. You've outgrown this position or this role or these people, so you can thrive and be your best self. And I think that is a huge part of emotional intelligence as well.
I also
Let me-
think I was oh.
well, here,
No,
actually, before we move on, let me address this to Adrian, because Lorene asked, "How did you actually handle that situation?" So before we move too far away, let me just let you tell Lorene how you actually handled the situation where you were told to dumb it down and all of that.
Well, it's interesting. This is why I think it's important to have a tribe or tribes or a solid mentor that has your best interest. Because when I reached out and had a sit down with two mentors, one is a Caucasian female, she's still my mentor today, and another one was a Caucasian male. Both said that's, don't own anything that's not yours to own, right? That's the first thing. And that's someone else's insecurity and selfish ambition. And so let's continue to be you. And we had a deep conversation about code switching, and that I didn't have to go into that room pretending to be someone I wasn't, to try to speak a different way to make someone else feel comfortable in his space, but that be who you are, and whether they like your energy, like your pitch, or your messaging, that just be your authentic self. And it just having that mentor or those mentors further validate, you are who you are, and either people will see your greatness and afford you an opportunity to unleash it, or, like was said this evening, package up your portfolio of talents and find an organization or a company that embraces you for who you authentically are.
Yeah.
I love it. Now,
Great
I'm
answer.
sorry. I think Dr. Bill, I think you were going to mention something.
No, I think Lucretia, you were going to say something.
I'm
Right?
sorry, Lucretia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off of Dr. Bell and also say that emotional intelligence is also knowing that it's not you, it's them. And I had a therapist tell me some years back, she was very wise. She told me that when someone is acting out or being rude or whatever the situation is, being disrespectful, making assumptions about you, whatever the case is, just have empathy for that person. And that will help you not get angry or allow it to affect your mood, because as soon as that happens, you shift your mindset to having empathy for that person, because no well-adjusted, healthy-minded person would behave in such a way, or whatever the case is. And so just have that empathy. So that has really helped me in situations such as what we're talking about.
Look, I want to go back really quickly and address this, because there was a comment where someone was saying, "Is it really the case that?" I believe all of you have said that y'all have experienced some sort of bias, something like that, in the workplace, in your business. Is it now? Me personally, I don't think it's possible that anyone of color isn't experiencing this, because the world, the way it's shaped, kind of to Tammy's point, the world isn't a place set up for us to be normalized as people of color. So let me just ask, has anyone ever heard of a story where someone has an experience bias or something? So I want to make sure we root that out and make that clear right now.
Not that I'm
I've
aware
heard
of.
of stories of people being in denial about
Exactly.
Yeah.
having biases against them. And I think for a lot of Black people, sometimes that is a way to protect themselves, because when you are experiencing racism, bias every day, that can take a toll. And I think some people go to a place of delusion to sustain their mental health.
Delusion.
So they have to pretend it's not really happening. They have to assign something else to it, because, if you are racialized Black in this country, having to think about that all the time, having to be, conscientious of your Black body in a space, or your Black body in a room, or how your Black voice is going to sound, or how are you talking Black? Are you dressing Black? Are you like, that can get exhausting for some people. And I think as a way for people to sometimes cope, they disconnect and they will assign what is happening to them racially. They'll assign something else to it. They'll assign mental, in the way that we do in this country about guns, right? We assign mental health to the act of violence of guns. And I think sometimes Black people will assign mental health. They'll assign, emotional instability. They'll assign all these other things to people to sometimes deal with racially what's happening to them. So I don't know that Black people don't experience biases. I just think people cope with their biases differently. And part of that is pretending it didn't happen.
I think that's a great point. I was going to say the flip side of that is some people, it's with some people it's self-hate. I hate to say that.
Yes.
In that, in that they crave for the acceptance so badly that they're in denial or delusional, and they feel as though because they are perceivably accepted that certain things aren't happening to them.
And they're overlooking sometimes what's really blatant to others. They're just overlooking.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I've actually experienced that before. Yeah.
Wow. Now we've all kind of talked a little bit about how sort of the way that it looks, the way that it shows up in the workplace, that sort of thing, or the way it shows up in your business. Let me ask you, any one of you want to talk a little bit about the impact? Because Eden just made the point that it does show up as anxiety at some point. And if we know anything about like generational trauma, things like that, it predisposes us to anxiety, and it predisposes us to depression and things like that. So that being said, have you all seen that first off, or experienced that? And how do you deal with that? Like, how are you using your emotional intelligence to kind of surpass that, or to get through those issues? And I'm sorry, any one of you can jump on it.
I'll go ahead and start. I think for me, it's always been used as a motivation. And I think, for us, we're always seen as the strong Black women, and sometimes it is tiring being strong for sure. But for me, I've always had to prove myself from the very beginning, because coming where I came from, people like me are not doctors. And then being a doctor, people like me don't graduate top of medical school, and then people like me, and so on and so forth. And there are already these assumptions when I walk in the room of what my capabilities are and my level of expertise. And so I'm constantly trying to work against that. And depending on how you choose to, not even necessarily choose to accept that, but depending on how you accept that, yes, it can be tiresome, it can be a burden, but I just choose to look at it from where I came from and from the people around me who now are like, man, I can do that. Look at what she did, and kind of hold it as my badge of honor, as opposed to something that I'm going to let, keep me down or kick me down. Of course, sometimes I'm weary, but I just keep on going, and it just motivates me to be more successful in any endeavor and continue beyond that. I'm a doctor. Okay, now I'm going to start a business. You can't be a doctor. Yes, I can. Why not? Just because you're not doing it, I can do that. And so for me, it's really just been a motivating force.
Yeah, I like that. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I agree. I always say anxiety, or there's some degree of healthy stress, but I always tell people to embrace the anxiety. I think it's how you go from good to great. All that adrenaline that's got you all nervous, that's to me, you're really about to unleash your greatness. And so embrace it as an ally and not an enemy. It's one of the kind of things that I do, even in the heat of the moment. Like, the heat could be radiating from my face, but you won't know it, because I'm like fully all in to demonstrate, my goodness and my ability to be a powerful player. The other thing, I would also maybe get people to kind of, I don't know if it's a healthy thing, but I'm the queen of compartmentalization. Like, I literally, it could be, you could have a meltdown in your car, but when you step in that room, no one in there is going to know that you have wavered, let alone stumbled and staggered for this defining moment. And so for me, it's it's the ability that you can come back out and unleash that with your glass of wine and your sister circle or your spouse or whatever, but you make sure you show up and you be that oddity. And all of that and the anxiety and the dummy it down, like when I stepped into that room, it was definitely not visible, and I did not waver from my messaging and what I intended to deliver, and skipped when I exited. So, and got everything I asked for. There were 3 questions and I was done. So I just think, stay true to who you are, compartmentalize that stuff that, will get in your headspace and cloud your judgment. And my daughter, she's like 23. So she's like, Mom, I don't know if that's really that healthy. They have all these triggers and boundaries and stuff, that generation. So it's like everything, so I'm just like, okay.
Gen Z's coming for our necks, y'all.
Yes, absolutely. They have 0 tolerance. Okay. And so, but that's kind of how I've managed. But yeah, just embrace some of that anxiety that, causes you to feel a little frustrated. And I think it is how you go from good to great.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about that, Adrian, because what I thought was really good about that is this idea that, oh, that didn't show up. This idea that there's one way or another to kind of handle those stressors. Now, look, I just saw my therapist Monday. He said that my getting distracted by my work and things like that, he said that's great. He's like, as long as it doesn't make it unbalanced, or as long as it doesn't pull you away from the people and the stuff that you love and that you care about. He's like, yes, those are all good coping mechanisms. So I want to applaud you, sis. I think that is an awesome way to go. Compartmentalize, have your car in your car and show back up, because that's your work. That's your body of work you're putting out there. And if you're choosing excellence, I think that is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about, put the credibility on my name.
That's
Your
right.
hard
That's
work
right.
has prepared. And I tell people there's no lost suffrage. So the hard work and the struggle has prepared you for these moments.
Mhm.
So just believe in yourself, it's kind of my motto.
Yeah.
Look at that. I think everyone is appreciating this advice, y'all. So let's keep it moving. There are some things that are like just very, very real. Well, real to all business owners. Any one of us who started a business knows that there are issues with everything from financial backing to making it an actual culture in your work. There are all sorts of things, but these things are amplified when it comes to the businesses that Black women start. So let me ask y'all, as far as like maybe culture of work, how does being emotionally intelligent with how you build your relationships, how does that help y'all along? Like how are you getting past the fact that there are Fortune 500 companies at this point that really don't know how to build cultures? How are y'all able to build relationships with the people, your workers, your vendors, anybody? How are you using that?
For me, I mean, it's pretty straightforward for me in terms of using emotional intelligence. I just like to remember the fact that people have to like working for you, with you, whatever you want to call it. And so I just try to keep that at top of mind. But my leadership style is very authentic, and that tends to create a culture in which people feel comfortable talking to me. There's an open door policy. I'm Yeah, I don't really put myself above or up here. I'm usually just right here and, neck and neck. And some people may not agree with that, but I don't, it has worked for me.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
What else? What else, y'all?
I think
I
what the
think
preacher said is true. Like, you gotta like, people have to like working with you in order to want to work with you. They just have to like working with you. And I know that's like an underrated thing that people think shouldn't matter, but it does matter.
Yep.
It does matter whether or not people want to be in a room with you. It does matter whether or not people want to work on a project with you. It does matter whether people want to be in community with you. It does matter. And being emotionally intelligent enough to know who you're going to work well with and who you're not going to work well with. I've had clients
True.
where I knew in the second meeting, like, we're not going to work well together.
Yeah.
You got two alpha personalities in this room, and you're coming to me because somebody told you you needed my help, but you don't believe you need my help. And that's something completely different, especially when you're in consulting. When somebody engages you for consultancy, they have to engage you because they know they need your help, not because somebody's telling them they need to hire you, because you're going to have a fraught relationship. So I like working with people who like working with me. And I understand that our first or second interaction may have gone fine and the third one may not go well, but being emotionally intelligent enough to get out of that relationship quickly, so that I'm not out resentful, they're not getting out resentful. We just realize, I liked you on the first and the second. The third, not so much. This isn't working for me and this isn't working for you. Being emotionally intelligent enough to understand that, to recognize that, and to be able to cut ties pretty quickly.
Sometimes you can tell on the consultation call.
Yeah, sometimes you can.
Yeah.
Oh, last spot was booked. Sorry.
Yeah. One of the things I struggle with too, and tell me if you ladies do, or you, Kelly, as well, is I'm very guarded. And I don't know if that's part of just being who I am or just other women who look like me culturally. Trust is very important, and loyalty. And I've had some situations where I thought, we were in sync, and learned the hard way. And so I sometimes struggle in terms, because originally I just thought, everybody wants to be good and positive. And then I learned that there are hidden agendas, and that, I cannot afford, I guess, with your professional capital, relationship capital, and or performance capital at risk, to be as trusting as I would like to be.
No, I think if you run a business, and I'll let Dr. Bell talk after me, but I think if you run a business, trust is huge, right? And I kind of walk into all relationships a little bit different. I don't walk into any relationship I have, whether that's professional or personal, guarded. It's just not the nature of who I am. I go into all relationships pretty open, and then you have to demonstrate to me why I need to close myself off to you. But I'm always paying attention to what you're telling me and what you're not telling me. I'm listening more to what you're not saying more than what you are saying to me. So I go into all relationships, business and otherwise, very open, to allow people to show me exactly who they are. Because when you go in closed and people can tell that you're closed, people start performing for you. And I think this is where you get in trouble, right? So if you go in guarded and people know that you're guarded, they're going to perform to get your trust, to then betray it. But if I go in open and you don't feel like you have to work for anything for me, then you're going to come in and you're going to show me exactly who you are in ways that you're not, because you're not coming in guarded because you don't feel guarded with me. So that's kind of how I've been able to assess pretty quickly who's there for the right reasons and who's not. I go in very open. I'm open. So you come in open, and then you just start telling me who you are. The times that I have been guarded, people have been performing to literally earn my trust, to then be the people who they were always meant to be. And I would have gotten that if I just kind of let them come into me open. That's been my experience.
I like both. I like both because honestly, it's about how you show up and how you allow them to show up.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go right on ahead, Dr. Bell.
Oh, no. I mean, honestly, it's a very lean machine over here. I think, so I also have some guardedness, and there's also this perfectionist sense of control situation in which I'm like, I'm just doing myself because I needed to be done like this. And so I do work with people, but in very limited capacities, that if you do show me something I don't like, it doesn't hurt me as much to lose that, right? But anything that's really important and core to who I am and what I deliver, I'm like, I'm gonna have to handle that, myself. And honestly, that's something I've been working on, because at some point, yes, you do need to give up some of that, but it's just, that is probably my biggest challenge.
Can I just say something to Adrian, and even you, Dr. Bell? This might be relevant to you, but I would challenge you guys to think about if maybe something happened that drove you to become guarded. I can say for myself, and I'm not saying that this is your experience at all, but I can say for myself, when I first started my business, I came into it too trusting, and that led me to making the wrong hiring decisions
Mhm.
repeatedly, which caused me to feel like I had to put a guard up, but really
Mhm.
it was my vetting process that needed some work too.
Mhm.
So I would just challenge you to think about if something might have happened, or it could be, just not wanting to relinquish control, like Dr. Bell said, because sometimes that's real too. Sometimes you
Yeah.
feel like, especially no shade to our generation. What's the generation?
Z.
Z. I love y'all, but some of y'all don't want to work. And
See,
yeah.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that about Generation Z. I
Okay.
don't believe that
I
generation.
think they work differently.
I don't think they want to work for anybody else. I think they want to
I
work for
I
themselves.
just don't think. I think I'm Generation X. I don't know what generation everybody else is in, but I'm Generation X, raised by baby boomers, and we were just raised to take whatever companies were going to give
That's
us.
right.
Mhm.
We were learned.
Yeah.
We were raised to just accept it, to be
Mhm.
grateful, to be thankful.
Mhm.
And Generation Z goes, we saw our parents do that, and
That's
what that
right.
got them was
Mhm.
laid off. What it
Yep.
got
Yep.
them was mental
No
health issues.
loyalty.
What it got
Mhm.
was no loyalty, and what it got them was
Mhm.
diseases. And
Yeah.
so I'm not going into any company. Like I said, I don't think it's that they don't want to work. They don't want to work the way we have been working.
Well, let me
Exactly.
just
That's how I
reframe
see it.
that. I can't really speak to that in the corporate space, but
Yeah.
I can only speak to the virtual assistants that I've repeatedly hired, which is a different arena when you have so much autonomy.
Mm.
A part of it is a sense that I don't know. I've had some unique experiences, but I can't really speak to that in terms of corporate. I know that the movement now is just demanding more of your worth, and like you said, and I'm totally for that, because I can recall 10 years ago, people thought that 60K was like a great salary, and now it's like this whole thing where six figures is kind of like the norm, and it's like that's the minimum wage now. So I get it, but when it comes to just kind of like being in the entrepreneur space and hiring some individuals, I think that it's taken to the extreme sometimes, that okay, the autonomy, and I think it's kind of taken to the extreme when it's a small business, it hits a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But
I think there's a mix. I think in every generation there's a mix. I think
Yeah.
for sure. So I guess technically I'm a millennial, but I think for me for sure it was like, especially being Black, coming from a poor neighborhood, like yes, oh my gosh, you're a doctor, that's it. And I worked so much in my life to become this, and I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. I believe God places this desire in my heart. But then I got here and I was like, oh okay. So what's next? Like what's after this? And everyone's like, you just be happy. You're here. You got it. And for me, just having those aspirations that are beyond that. And I think some people have it, but may not necessarily get the piece about all the work that goes into it. And then some people, again, like myself, like I think, I'm like a lot of my colleagues are like, we're not being in this traditional box that you put us in, that this is how you have to operate and you can't do anything else and just be happy that you're here. Like, no, I worked hard enough to create the life that I want and deserve. And because I have these credentials, that'll allow me to do,
You should have
things. So I think,
choices.
Something else.
yeah, those choices. But I think in
Right.
every generation, you're going to find a mix of
Every
people.
generation is.
right.
Look,
Yeah.
I
I think so. That's a
Yeah.
honestly, I
I
think
love
Tammy
how
called
that
it.
they're romanticizing their lives, and I love it. I
Yes,
absolutely
I
love that
agree.
about Gen Z. They are romantic. They're imagining life differently, and for
The
those
Right.
of us
way they imagine it
who've
should
only
be.
been in this version of life,
Mhm.
we can't even fathom their imagination of their own lives, and I
I
absolutely love that too. I
I
do
do
love
too.
that.
Yeah.
I do
And,
too.
and I think even beyond Gen Z, I think, the pandemic opened our eyes too
Yeah,
to the art of the possible and the
yeah.
life that we
yes,
could
yes,
have,
Mhm.
and an opportunity to reprioritize, reframe what you want your life to be in a whole different framework. And it gave people pause of what the priority was. Do I
yes,
need to be,
yes.
12 hours a day, working weekends, taking calls while I'm having dinner? Or do I put up some, guards and say, look,
Mhm.
there's more to life than this, and I want to have more of a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I gotta imagine that we are going to see a bunch of variations, but it does seem like a generational kind of pendulum swing where I know my mom and dad were at jobs 20, 30 years, and that was my expectation. So that, when I hit like 30 and I saw that people weren't staying at jobs more than 5 years, it was like, oh, wait, what's going on? And I
Mhm.
didn't get it initially. But look, this moves me into this other line of questioning because you all may not know it, but we're coming up on an hour. And Dr. Bell, I know you're going to have to
Yeah.
hop off soon. But
Yes.
while we got you, let's ask a few more questions kind of about future and about where to go from here and how to use this information. So all of y'all have your own path, your own road that you've gone on with emotional intelligence. What things are you facing right now, or do you anticipate that you're going to face? Because we have a bunch of Black women who are watching right now, and they're in different parts of this journey as far as entrepreneurship, whatever. They're owning their businesses now. What are you seeing, and how do you advise them on how to get past these challenges that you're seeing? So I'm sorry. Let me
It
rephrase
was.
it. What's a lot shorter question? Using through the lens of your emotional intelligence, how do you help people to get past the obstacles that you're either facing or you see coming down the line?
I think it's taking a moment to really be introspective about what you want and why you want it. And then understanding what it means to get there and building a support system around you too. I think when you ask the question of like, how do you deal when someone, treats you this way and it starts to make you second guess yourself, surround yourself with people who want to actually see you successful and love you enough to tell you and like, no, you probably should work on that. Or like, no, that's not right, and build that village. And that might be made up of different people throughout different stages of your career and where you're going, but really seek out that support, that advice, and understand what your trajectory is and don't waver from that. Imposter syndrome is huge. That's going to come up throughout so many elements in households. But really, I think, like I say, emotional intelligence is empathy for others and understanding others and responding to, their cues, but also really understanding yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, the vulnerable, and taking a second with yourself. Like, I love what you said, Adrienne. I forgot what you said specifically that you did, but like really taking a second to understand yourself and what that means on your journey.
The lonely work.
The lonely work. Yes.
Adrian, that makes me think though. You also mentioned the part about like your girl crew. My wife tells me women can't get along with each other because women be too catty and judgmental and everybody blah blah blah. Let me ask y'all this: how do you get past like how are y'all using y'all relationship tools to like get past and to find Adrian, you mentioned having a white male mentor or having a whole crew of women that you're down with and all of that. How are y'all building these relationships? And is there any sort of particular place you're looking for building these relationships? Because that's obviously what you need, a network.
It's funny. I tell people, your associations are different, right? So you might have someone you vacation with, and that's a different tribe. Now, that might not be the person or group of women I share my brilliant business idea with, because that just might not be the space in which we service each other in terms of our lives and our support system. But I think it's important for you to have mentors in your field of discipline and or interest, or if you want to pivot and grow in another area, you need to align yourself with the right resource there. Because I believe performance capital only takes you so far, right? You
Mhm.
have to have a network of individuals that can also help and shape and help, even if it's just education, but help influence your trajectory, right? And no one gets to where they want to be alone, is my humble opinion. Either they're in denial or maybe just lying a little bit there. But we all have had people help us, right? So, you have to build a network, and mentoring is one, your tribe. You have to, I believe, for your own sanity, mental health wise, you got to have a group that you can unleash. Like when Lucretia, when you're going through a safe space where you can be psychologically safe. It could even be a life coach, it could be a mentor, it could be a therapist. And I think that's an area that we don't tap into as much. But having just someone that I can talk to professionally, and I think it's so important to navigate through the complexity of life with the right resources in terms of your network. And when you need to take a break, take a break. Continue to do that lonely work. But when you need to take a break and you've reached your tipping point, it is okay to fall back, have your mental health day, have your spa day, but you've got to find a way to rejuvenate yourself and being reflective. You will know when you're at that tipping point. But I think the network can also help and guide you and point and say, look, you know what, you kind of a little bit off. And then you even have accountability partners in that circle when you want to accomplish something. Someone that says, no, you've got this, you know, when you fall down or you feel the world is heavy. I just think it's so important. I can honestly say I'm a believer and 100% a benefactor from the best mentors, sister circle, association networks, and tribes.
Tammy, let me kick this over to you because I mean, because you have your Beyonce hair blowing, but then
I
also,
told her I love it.
right, she's gonna.
I didn't know that was a
It was
requirement. I said, I
Listen, this is menopause, okay? This is
Look,
not this is menopause. Why this fan is on?
y'all don't all have y'all fans on, so y'all missed the memo. I sent that out beforehand. Uh, no, look, I want to know from you, Tammy, what when it comes to building that network, building that crew, building that foundation, what are you looking for? What are you doing to make that happen? And how does your emotional intelligence play into that decision?
I'm looking for like-mindedness.
Okay.
That's really what I'm looking for is like-mindedness. And we can be in different professions, we can have different goals, but if our minds are this is what we want to accomplish, this is what we want to do, and how we get there, and then personally how I get along with you. Do I like you? Outside of when we're talking, do you make me laugh? Right? Because when you're an entrepreneur and you're working alone, like Adrian said, the lonely work, it can get lonely, and sometimes just being able to call somebody that can make you laugh, right? That and I have friends. I have one friend that is incredibly critical. And I didn't always appreciate that at the beginning because it's like, listen, I'm just trying to tell you what I'm trying to do. Like, why can't you ever support it? But you need that critical friend because that critical friend is literally just looking at it for what it is. They're not considering your emotions. They're not considering, oh, this is my passion. It's my dream. They don't give a damn about that. They're just being critical about what the idea is and helping you navigate, will this work? And so for as much as you're going to have friends that are going to be cheering you on, I think every girlfriend should have that one critical friend. And, you know, critical not in a way of jealousy or trying to hurt you.
Negative.
Critical in a way of, I'm going to give you a view that your other friends are not going to tell you. I'm going to tell you the truth. Like, girl, that wig ain't sitting. Girl, that this ain't doing that. Like,
it's constructive.
You know, like that friend. Like, everybody told you it was cute, but girl, listen. Right? You need that. I think you need a critical friend, and you need people that are going to make you laugh, especially if you're doing this work alone. Like, laughter is it's just healing for the soul, and we see that in how we operate as Black people. You know, when we say things like Black people can't take nothing serious. Like, I don't care what serious is going on in the world. Somebody Black will make a meme that's just going to be like the highlight because it's important because the world is heavy. Operating as a Black woman, Black person, navigating this world, it's heavy. And so being able to come to a place of laughter, but also having a friend that's critical of you, that's really that's going to give you honest and constructive criticism.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned.
I'm so sorry, Kelly. I just want to jump in. I do have to hop off. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Kelly, for having me. This was
very nice to meet you.
Yep.
Very
Thanks
nice
so much.
to meet you. Hopefully we can have future conversations.
Yes, and Dr. Bell, I'm in Chicago as well.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So I'll shoot you a note. Yeah,
okay.
I'll send you a note.
All right, thanks. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned what you mentioned, Tammy, about having that critical person, because I was going to have to push back. I was going to say, well, if you have people who just make you laugh, if you have somebody who, you know, you just get along with, where's the accountability person? But I think that's probably something that is, oh, yep, perfect. We all have a blind spot, and sometimes we need that raw honesty.
Yeah.
So I can 100% appreciate you bringing that up. Lucretia, what about you, sis? When you're thinking about that crew of people, like, what are you looking for? How do you choose those people through the lens of like your emotional intelligence? How do you know what you need?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because for me, I like to set a boundary between business and my friendships. Across the board, we have to be like-minded. We have to have similar core values.
Okay.
It needs to be a fit.
Yeah.
Right. And this is just on a personal level, right? Yeah, personal, spiritual level. So that is a requirement in general. However, in terms of being in business, I try to set boundaries with my friendships because I don't want our friendship to turn into us just talking about business all the time. So we tend to maybe, talk about a couple of points, but then get back on track. All right, so what's going on? You dating? What's going on? And we try
Mhm.
to have a conversation about real stuff that's going on in our lives personally. So we tend to all have that agreement where we're
Mhm.
setting a boundary, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Mhm.
Look, Adrian mentioned something in her comment. Boy, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Um, but it was when you mentioned about no one making it to this spot alone. Um, a lot of the business people that I work with are like they're solopreneurs. They're people who are really trying to push on their own. When that kind of person is looking for their tribe, how would you suggest they go about it? Because their business workings are usually them doing everything.
Right.
But how do they find that?
Can I add can I
Oh,
add
go
something
ahead,
to
Lucretia.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah. And the reason why we set those boundaries is because we tend to want to build relationships outside of that
Mhm.
personal network. And so, what I would recommend for someone who's a solopreneur or anyone in business who's looking to build a network, I would recommend for you to be of service.
Mm,
There's a book that I read. It's a book that I swear by. It's called Ego is the Enemy. I
mm,
don't know if you
I've
guys
heard of
ever
that.
read
I've
that. It's
heard of
really
that.
good.
Ego. Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about the canvas strategy, and it talks about making other people look good, and it's very deep,
It's
but
like the humility is the new smart.
yeah.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And
Mhm.
I would say be of service. That is literally how I've built my network. That's literally how
Mhm.
I built my business. When I lost my job, I got fired and I was like, I'm about to do this business full time. I literally started reaching out to people on LinkedIn offering 1 hour free strategy sessions.
Mm,
Those
Mhm.
strategy sessions then turned into clients, referrals, lasting connections. And I also make friends with my clients as well because they are just like me. They tend to be just like me. So when I hear solopreneur, yeah, you're probably a solopreneur in that maybe it's just you and a VA. You don't
mhm,
have other
mhm,
Mhm.
coaches that you've hired and stuff, but I'm sure you have a network. You should.
I
mhm,
do.
Mhm.
I do.
Yeah.
mhm.
I'm a
Yeah.
solopreneur, and I absolutely have a network, and I
Yeah.
look to partner with people that's in the same vein of what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
do company culture and DEI, but emotional intelligence is critical to that work too. And so
Mhm.
one of my connections here on LinkedIn, Adam, is certified in emotional intelligence, and so whenever I'm working with a client, I find ways to try to bring Adam in to that discussion.
Mhm.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'm working with somebody that makes sense to the work I'm doing. Like there's an interconnectedness to the work that we do. And
Mhm.
then I found Vonda on LinkedIn as well, and we launched the Unleash Empathy masterclasses that we do around racial discrimination
Mhm,
and biases, and about the change that needs to happen in DEI. And so you may be a solopreneur, but partner with people. So
Right.
you don't
Right.
feel alone in your work. I mean, and it gets, I
Mhm.
guess, really depends on what your business is. But no matter what your business is, you can partner
Right.
with somebody else. There's somebody
Mhm.
else you can find to connect with. I go to a lot of work sharing spaces.
Mm,
Sometimes I'll just leave my house and go to a work sharing space. I'm working
mhm,
with people. We're all doing different things, but we're in this little community together. And it's like, oh, what's going
Mhm.
on with you? Did your client get that? Like we know what's happening with each other's
Mhm.
work, although
Mhm.
we're not working together. And so find ways to build community so you don't feel so alone in your work.
mhm.
absolutely. I agree with that.
It's such an
Yeah.
awesome thing that moves a little bit into the next thing that I'm curious about because, again, tackling the issues that Black women are facing more and more than these other groups are. Um, Being able to be financed, like venture capitalists are overlooking Black women
Mm.
by leaps and bounds. That being said, I really started to think about what you all were mentioning as far as building your network. Is that the same way you'd build your network when you want to maybe get in a room with people who maybe wouldn't see you and think, oh man, yeah, I'm going to work with her. Is emotional intelligence helping you all to build those kind of relationships where you can like build them the same way with business partners in the future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
shout out to, I'm just going to speak for myself, but shout out to Black women because
Mhm.
Black women have showed up for me and my business in ways that is I'm still in business today because of Black women. If it wasn't for
Wow.
Black women last year, I would have probably been back in the workplace. And it was a Black woman that had been following me on TikTok. And she's like, I just watch your TikToks. I just get so much value from your TikTok.
Mhm.
And she's like, I want to bring you in to my company. And that training has led to additional training with different parts of her company. And people can tell if you are emotionally intelligent and if you know what it is you're talking about in terms of whatever your
Yeah.
business and industry is. So
Yeah.
whenever I'm talking, whether I'm making a video for LinkedIn or I'm making a video for TikTok, I am always thinking about how the end client is going to hear this message.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Knowing your audience.
Mhm.
I'm always aware of what am I
Mhm.
saying and who's going to hear
Mhm.
this message. And
Mhm.
I'm never big on, and especially when you get into social media, if you have a business where social media is where you're going to, because this is where we are now in marketing, right? Like everything is so social
Yeah.
media
Yeah.
driven. And so
Right.
I
Your
like to
own
think about,
brand.
right. I like to think about this marketing as what I like to call soft marketing, right? And so I'm not
Mhm.
hitting you over the head with ads and not giving you a bunch of graphics. I'm just
Sure.
presenting myself because I am my business. I'm a consultant. So you have to trust what I'm saying. You have to feel like you like me a little bit to even want to engage me in
Mhm.
conversation. And because I use social media that way, I'm never caught up on, and I see this on LinkedIn as well, how many people like my post. Nobody's following me. I was watching a TikTok and I don't remember the name of the gentleman, but he said he was on YouTube. He was a Black man. And he said he was on YouTube and his videos were only getting like 5 views, 5 or 6 views. And he was like, that was happening to him for like a year, but he was showing up every day on
Mhm.
his YouTube as if 5,000 people were watching him. He just kept
Mhm.
showing up.
Mhm.
And one of his girlfriends was, I think he said, the personal stylist for Oprah Winfrey.
Hmm.
And Oprah Winfrey was trying to find new talent for show development ideas. And his girlfriend asked Oprah, have you seen my friend's YouTube? Now, he said at this time, only like 6 people were watching my YouTube, but I was showing up on set like thousands of people are watching me. And he
Yeah.
said, then he noticed and he's like, probably 4 of those views were my mom alone, just rewatching my YouTube. And he said he noticed like his views went up to like 6 or 7, right? And he said he kept seeing like it was going from 5 to 6, 5 to 6. And he's like, oh, I got a new follower, I got a new watcher. That sixth person was Oprah Winfrey.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I always tell people, don't be so concerned about who is watching you, who is
Mhm.
liking you. The sixth person could be the person that's going to change your life and the trajectory of
Mhm.
your business.
Hmm.
And I know we're in the social media world where brands don't want to work with you unless you have this many followers, this many engagement, and this many
Mhm.
numbers. And so you can get so hyper focused on numbers that you miss out on your quality and your content. Show
Mhm.
up
Right.
to your work, show up to your business as if you need 5,000 customers, prepare your packages as if you're already preparing them for 5,000 customers. If
Absolutely.
you want to have a big audience, talk as if you already have that big audience.
Right.
You have no idea who's watching you on LinkedIn. You have no
Mhm.
idea who's watching you on TikTok or YouTube. And so show up to your work, show up to your life like you already
Mhm.
have the thing you want. And you
Now,
just
Absolutely.
need one person.
yes, right. It could be that Oprah.
You just need
Yep.
one person to see you. You just need one person to invest in you. You just need one
Mhm.
person. And so that's just kind of how I show up for my business is I only need one person because the Black woman that showed up for me on TikTok, I was just showing up on TikTok like how, and I was having thousands of views on my video. She was only one person that changed the trajectory of my business and why I still
Wow.
am in
Wow.
business. And so please don't be caught up in how much you think you don't have or watching other people on LinkedIn or watching other people
Mhm.
on TikTok or watching other people on YouTube. Show up for yourself And you just need one person. One.
Absolutely.
Look,
Focus on the quality and not the quantity.
Yes.
indeed, yeah. Look, let me ask y'all, because one of the things that we get, and probably the vast majority of business owners are in this spot, and that means that with more and more Black women coming into this space of entrepreneurship, man, am I saying that right? With more of us coming into this space, it makes me wonder, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you build up that resilience? Now, we know resilience is another one of those things that you learn in EQ and that sort of thing, but how do you build up that resilience? Because from
Kelly.
what we all know, we've been getting a lot of no's before we'll get a yes. And if you're a Black woman, that means you're probably getting even more no's before you get to that first yes.
Mhm.
How do you stay on top of that? How do you use your emotional intelligence for that?
I
Brother,
would
we're
say,
Black. We're built. We're coming to the world resilient. Like we're Black.
Right. You've
You
had
know,
enough setbacks that have become
I mean,
setups,
come
right?
on, Kelly.
There's
know-
no lost suffrage, is what I tell people.
Now,
well, so some people don't have that resilience all the time. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that
Yeah.
literally give up very fast, even after they've made a 5-figure investment. And, so not everyone has that inherent,
yeah.
resilience.
See, y'all are speaking from the choir point of view, like y'all already singing it. But the reality is that there are a lot of folks, just like Lucretia said, who these are people who, maybe they're earlier on in the journey and they haven't experienced that success. And that's what makes that one person who stood out and got Oprah's view, that makes them stand out, because that's probably not the norm, y'all. It's happening a lot. And a lot of our Black women are going to give up because they're not.
It's reminding us, though, right? I think it's reminding people of, like, most of us have resilience. We just don't know that we are operating from a place of resilience. Some of us think it's just us being, like the mom who's getting up at 6 a.m. to get at the bus stop to go to work.
You're
for
just
her
doing
kids.
what you think you have to do.
She's doing it, right? And so sometimes when you help people audit their lives and audit how they've been showing up in the world, you can show them they've always had resilience. They just didn't know that's what they were operating from. So when I
call
say
it the Dorothy syndrome, right?
Yes,
you were always home. You always
were
had the ability.
doing it. You just didn't realize that you were doing it. So when I say, like, we were born Black, I'm not being flippant about that. I'm just saying, if you are a Black person, whether you were in elementary school, middle school, high school, if you went to a PWI, if you worked in corporate America, you have always been operating. Your very presence is resistance. Your very presence is resilience, right? And so sometimes you have to remind people that you've always been operating in this. You just didn't know that you were. And I think once you can help people see how they have been resilient in their lives, that they didn't even think about, they just took for granted. Like the fact that I had to get up at 5 a.m. and get on a bus and wasn't getting home at 9 o'clock and was still cooking for my kids, and still, like, they just see that as that's what I had to do. But that's resilience.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
We got
okay. Yeah. So from a business context, I don't know if you want to call it resilience or lack thereof, or what it is, but a lot of women do give up. I watch it all the time, and I'm actually more inclined to say that it's ego more than anything, because and when you hear the word ego, people think, oh, stuck up, think you all that. That's not what it is.
No.
Usually the women that I work with are they're brilliant. They're all brilliant. They're all key contributors, top performance, climbed the ladder, got the degrees, all of that. But when it comes to staying consistent with building their brand, if they are not getting the traction quickly enough, if they're not getting the vanity metrics, if the results aren't coming fast enough, there's self-sabotage there. I don't know what to attribute that to, but a lot of women do give up. I see it all the time.
What do you do with that, Lucretia? Like
Yeah. Do
how
they
are
say
you
why?
using you from a emotional intelligence lens? How do you instruct them? Because I like what Tammy just mentioned about how she'd instruct. How do you how do you get them to turn that corner then?
Yeah, well, I always remind them that clarity and confidence comes from consistency. And I always urge them to follow purpose and not passion, because passion, there's a lot of emotions that get tied into that. Most of the women that I work with, they feel that whatever it is they're trying to build a business for is their calling. They feel like this is their God-given purpose,
Mhm.
and that they've been searching for purpose in the corporate workplace and they just not have been able to do that. And so when I say follow purpose and not passion, is if you know that this is what you were called to do, you have to do it. Right. So passion is, oh, I want to quit my job. I want to build a 6-figure business. I want to do that. Purpose is, I was called to help this audience do XYZ, or impart whatever this is on the world. And I try to keep them centered on that, and also remind them that, like, look, dude, you went through school, you went through all this training and stuff to prep for your corporate career. You didn't hop out of the womb being the director of engineering. You have to
Yeah.
learn your business just like you had to learn this other stuff. So a lot of it is like that rejection or the ego, the self-sabotage. And it's like, nah, on second thought, let me just resort to this because I'm already good at this. And I don't have time to be struggling and, all of that.
How do you
Yeah.
help them clarify what is purpose and what is passion? Because I think a lot of people assume their passion is their purpose. How do you help folks clarify? Because I think a lot of people say that's my purpose, and it may not be their purpose, right? Which is why they give up on it so easy, give up on it so readily. So how do you help when somebody comes to you and you say, what is your passion and what do you believe your purpose is? How do you help them clarify what is actually passion and what is actually purpose?
Well, that's an interesting question. What I will say is that passion and purpose, from my perspective, it is intertwined. It's just the way that you view it, right? So passion is saying all these things that you're going to do and that you want to do, but purpose is, if this is genuinely what you feel called to do, and it's just something that you have to do. You have to do it. You have to go through with it. And I think if I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
I, I just want to say something because it's African American women and probably other women, minority women as well. What I find that we do, and there's a lot of data and science. I don't know why we do this though. We are way more competent than we are confident.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
And
yes,
we could be
yes.
80% there. Like,
right.
you got this. This is your time. And the 20%, we just blow it up, right? We magnify, we focus on, oh, I can't do this, and I don't have the opportunity to do this, and if I had that other certificate, but I can't travel for that engineering job, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
I sit with men all the time that are way less confident. I mean, competent, but they're
And way less
confident.
credentialed.
Yeah, exactly. Way less credential, but they will sell themselves and others because they focus on that ability to be confident. And so what my ask would be for us as women to, and I even share this even with my daughter, like, you have to go in as competent and as confident as possible. We tend to always focus on it. I mean, I've seen women that exactly, that are they've got the credentials, they've got the performance capital. There's 5% missing, and they've taken all their energy for the past week and talked themselves right out of the opportunity. That if you turn that 5%, corner, exactly, if you just turn that corner, knowing that 5% I'm going to get it, you're there. And and so getting women to think in terms of, I'm worthy of the opportunity. I've earned my seat at the table.
Yeah.
I just needed access, and I've got this. And
Right.
and the exposure is another thing. Like, you have to put yourself in these situations of growth and opportunity, because I sit where men say, look, I can't pick women that aren't there.
Yeah.
So if you don't go after it, you don't believe enough in yourself to compete and be confident and competent, we get to, like what Lucretia was saying, you just gave up when you were right there. You were right there in terms of the break you needed, right?
Right.
The one decision, you're one decision away from the dream, and you fall short only because of a lack of confidence.
Right.
And so
Lack of
that's
confidence,
my
and also self-awareness plays a role in it too.
Sure.
You know, I don't want to seem like the person who is being a Debbie Downer, but I just want to be, you know, realistic. And I think that
Gotta be true to it.
self-awareness, yeah, self-awareness plays a huge role in it as well. And I think since we're talking about emotional intelligence and entrepreneurship, we have to also keep in mind that if you want to build a business, you have to understand that you can't make excuses for why you can't do it or why you don't have time to do it. I mean, I work with women. I've actually had a client who told me, well, you know, I have children and I have this and I have that and the third, you know, going on. And you wouldn't understand. You have all the time in the world to build your business. And it's like, you don't know what I have going on in my life. You know, I got a whole puppy. I got a whole, you know, I got parents. I got, you know, I got a partner. You know, I got things that I'm doing. But I think self-awareness is just kind of like understanding that you do have some weaknesses and there are some things that you need to work on and you have to fight through that. It's also going to be a grind, you know, building your business. And so I think just making sure that you have that self-awareness to know when it's really some circumstances that is preventing you from being able to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, and when you're holding yourself back and you're making excuses or whatever the case is. So I
Yeah.
just
and see, that's that lonely work. That's that you
right.
have to get still with yourself,
Yeah.
right? To be reflective
Yeah.
and become self-aware, you have to have some place or space of stillness, right?
You
Where
need
you
to
can
have.
literally be one. You have
Yeah.
to. And I
Yeah.
think it's critical to your growth, right? And
It is,
and to
man.
get the right level, I pray all the time for clarity and alignment, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to get still in order to get the clarity you need to maybe better distinguish between what's passion, what's purpose, what's a calling, what I'm anointed before I'm appointed, however you want to get to that space. But that's that still, like, sometimes we're so busy, we don't take the time just to get still with oneself. Someone asked me one time in a leadership forum, and you're grinding, and they said, do you have unplanned rest? And I was like, that doesn't even sound like that's legit. Like,
That's not a real
what's
thing.
unplanned rest? It does, yeah,
I
that's
got
like an
planned rest.
oxymoron. Exactly. Right. Yeah, I have to schedule that time.
Yeah.
But it's the ability to just sometimes, look, I just need to get clear on a few
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
so that I can get some order and prioritization. And I just think, as women, like you said, we're wearing so many hats, doing so many things for us and others, community, whatever your place of worship, but just, you have to find some time for you.
And
I
mind
think, to
shift
answer
is
those questions.
like mind shifting your mind. Like I was saying at the beginning of this, I don't walk into rooms and assume that I am privileged to be there. I want them to tell me why they're privileged to have me in the room. Right. And if you walk in with that mindset, and I listen, this is not easy, right? Like, I'm 45. This took me years to get here, right? From your own self-development. One of the things that I practice every morning is I sit quietly with myself. And Vonda says to me all the time, she was like, you just trust yourself. I absolutely, inexplicably trust myself. I know I have all the answers I need. I know the answers I know I have all the answers I need. I will sit with myself. I will ask myself the question for whatever it is I'm trying to get clarity with, and I will become still and quiet. And if you become still and quiet, you have the answers. And we live in a society that tells us to look outside of ourselves for the answer.
Mhm.
What book
Right.
can I read? What seminar can I go to?
Yeah.
What conference can I
Mhm.
have? What speaker can I listen to? And if you trust yourself, and this is going to be important no matter what work you're doing, whether you're doing business by yourself, whether you're in a corporation, whether you're in a relationship, I don't care, whatever the work is that you're
Mhm.
doing, being able to trust yourself is going to be imperative. And again, because we are socialized not to trust ourselves, we as women are told to quiet that gut instinct that says, don't
Mhm.
go, that guy seems sneaky, but we don't want to seem rude. So what do? We quiet that thing in us. We walk into
Mhm.
spaces and we put ourselves in danger because we're taught, don't listen to your voice, don't trust your gut
Mhm.
instincts, and just get quiet with yourself.
Mhm.
I promise you, if you take
But you know
nothing else
what?
I said tonight, every answer you need, you
It's
already
within
have.
you. Mhm.
I got to tell you, Tammy, we're so socialized, and I feel like all of us are
All of us.
socialized, but definitely women more so, and women of color even more so, are socialized to stay small, stay quiet, not to speak up, and definitely not to trust themselves.
Mhm.
So I'm
Mhm.
100% with you. You all, we have hit the end mark though.
Yes.
So ladies, I got to thank all of y'all so much. Y'all are so
This
awesome.
is awesome.
Look, Eden
Thanks for
Eden
having us.
mentioned that she was in tears, and you can't really beat that as a sentiment of how much someone enjoyed this content. So I'm super glad to be a part of it. Before I say goodbye to everyone, let me just mention, along the lines of what we've been talking about, y'all. I am launching my a free kind of inner work webinar where we're going to actually talk about more of this stuff a little bit more in depth, and y'all actually have a chance where I can work with you and actually give you tools, strategies, things like that, so that you can actually walk through figuring out the difference between purpose and passion, or figuring out what's your voice and what's the voice from all of your saboteurs and stuff in the background. So if you click on that link in the comments, you'll see a free sign up sheet. I just want to be able to offer it to people who actually want it, so that it doesn't get filled with a bunch of people who won't be there. All right, you all, I love y'all so much. Thank y'all so much again. Until next time, I want to give everybody a great good night. And hopefully, y'all will be doing another part of this where we get even more of this good information. So thank everyone for showing up and for your comments and your love. And we'll see you next time.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thanks for having me.
Bye,
Thanks, ladies. I learned a lot from
everyone.
you all too. Thank
Yes,
you.
I surely did. This was fun.
This
Have
was
fun.
really, really good.